I never thought I'd discover betrayal through a banking app notification. Yet there I stood in the Metropolitan Museum's sculpture garden, draped in a midnight blue gown that cost more than my first car, staring at my phone in disbelief. The annual Parsons Foundation Gala hummed around me, glasses clinking, conversation bubbling, New York's art elite networking in their finery, while my world silently imploded. Investment transfer complete, $437,500. Nearly $500,000, my collection fund, transferred to an offshore account I didn't recognize. 6 years of careful saving, auction hunting, and strategic investments, gone with a digital whisper. My fingers trembled as I refreshed the screen, hoping for some glitch, some mistake. The transaction remained, mocking me with its finality. There you are. I've been looking everywhere. Marcus appeared at my elbow, champagne flutes in hand, his custom Armani fitting his tall frame perfectly. My partner of 3 years, my business collaborator, my supposed future. He pressed a cold glass into my hand, his familiar cologne mingling with the garden's roses. Steven's just arrived. He's interested in that Murakami piece. This could be our breakthrough. I looked up at him, studying his face as though seeing it for the first time. The sharp jawline that I'd traced countless times with my fingertips. The confident smile that had charmed galleries from Chelsea to Soho. The eyes? Were they always this calculating? Is something wrong, Elise? His brow furrowed with practiced concern. Nothing, I replied, pocketing my phone. Just a work notification. I forced a smile. Years of negotiating with difficult clients finally serving a personal purpose. You mentioned Stevens? Let's not keep him waiting. As we walked back into the gala's main hall, my mind raced through possibilities. Was it a mistake? A hacking attempt? But deep down, I already knew. The timing was too perfect, just 1 week before our gallery expansion, when those funds would have been moved anyway. Only 3 people had knowledge of that account. Me, my financial advisor Diane, and Marcus. I'd met Marcus at a small gallery opening in the Lower East Side 3 years ago. Back then, I was 5 years into building my consultancy business, helping emerging artists connect with buyers and galleries. He was charismatic, knowledgeable, and seemingly devoted to the same mission, elevating underrepresented artists in an industry dominated by established names and old money. Our professional partnership evolved into romance within months. Last year, we'd begun planning our own gallery space in Tribeca. My contribution, capital from my carefully built art collection fund. His, connections, and a stake in his family's smaller gallery in Chicago. Elise Harlow, a familiar voice broke through my thoughts. Diana Chen, my oldest friend from art school and now curator at the Whitney, approached with arms outstretched. That dress is criminal. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she hugged me, whispering, "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I need to talk to you," I whispered back. Privately. Diana, ever perceptive, nodded almost imperceptibly. "Marcus," she said with practiced brightness, "Jacob was just asking about that emerging photographer you mentioned, the one from Detroit. Would you mind terribly?" Marcus hesitated, glancing between us. "Of course," he finally said. "I'll be right back." As soon as he disappeared into the crowd, Diana pulled me toward an alcove behind a massive Calder sculpture. "Spill it." I showed her my phone. "He's stealing from me, Di. My entire collection fund, nearly $500,000. Her expression shifted from concern to fury. "That son of a bitch. Are you certain?" "Who else could it be? The account details were private, the timing perfect. We're finalizing the gallery paperwork next week." I ran a hand through my carefully styled hair, not caring that I was ruining hours of a stylist's work. He must have gotten my authentication code somehow. Diana's analytical mind, the same one that had earned her reputation for spotting emerging talent, was already working. "First, we need proof. Second, we need to stop any further transfers. Third," her eyes hardened, "we make him pay." "I can't cause a scene here," I said, watching the glittering crowd through the alcove's entrance. "The Parsons are my biggest clients." "No scene," Diana agreed. "But we need to move fast. Call Diane tonight. Freeze everything. I'll have my brother look at the transfer details." Her brother, a cybersecurity specialist, had helped the gallery identify art forgeries through digital authentication techniques. What's your plan for the rest of the evening? I straightened my shoulders, muscle memory from years of entering rooms where I was underestimated. I play the part. Keep him thinking everything's normal while I figure out exactly what he's done. Diana squeezed my hand. That's my girl. And Elise? Remember who you are. You built your reputation on integrity and brilliance long before he came along. As I rejoined the gala, my shock was hardening into something colder, more focused. I spotted Marcus across the room, charming a potential investor with that easy laugh. 6 hours ago, that laugh had made me feel like the luckiest woman in New York. Now, I recognized it as the practice tool it was. I'd spent my career teaching artists how to value their work, how to protect themselves in an industry built on exploitation disguised as opportunity. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me as I glided through the crowd, accepting compliments on the gallery plans, watching Marcus work the room as though nothing had changed. By midnight, my performance had earned an Oscar. I'd laughed at the right moments, secured 2 new clients, and even kissed Marcus on the cheek when he closed a deal with Stevens, all while my phone buzzed with confirmations from Diane. Accounts frozen, lawyers alerted, preliminary traces showing the money had indeed been moved to an account in the Caymans connected to a shell company. As our town car pulled away from the museum, Marcus loosened his tie with a satisfied sigh. Tonight was perfect, he said, reaching for my hand in the darkness. Stevens is in for the Murakami. Henderson wants first option on any new Basquiat prints, and the Parsons practically guaranteed their support for the opening exhibition. I let him hold my hand, feeling the weight of his signet ring against my fingers, the same fingers that had likely typed in my passwords while I slept. You were amazing tonight, he continued, misreading my silence as fatigue. This gallery is going to change everything for us. The car glided through Manhattan's late-night streets, skyscrapers gleaming like sentinels against the darkness. 3 years of memories flickered through my mind. Our first date at the hole-in-the-wall ramen shop near his apartment, weekends spent gallery hopping in Chelsea, late nights discussing art politics over bottles of wine. Had any of it been real, or was I simply the means to an end? A successful consultant with connections and, more importantly, capital. Yes, I finally replied, squeezing his hand with deliberate gentleness. I believe it will change everything. What Marcus didn't know was that I had already decided. This betrayal wouldn't break me, it would become my masterpiece. The penthouse felt different that night. Once a sanctuary of exposed brick, floor-to-ceiling windows, and carefully curated art that Marcus and I had selected together, now every corner seemed filled with deception. I kicked off my heels at the door, the familiar thunk against hardwood no longer signifying the relief of coming home. Nightcap, Marcus called from the kitchen, already reaching for the scotch we'd brought back from that gallery tour in Scotland. Not tonight, I replied, forcing warmth into my voice. Early meeting with the Taiwanese collector tomorrow, remember? He nodded, pouring a single glass instead. I watched his movements, so familiar yet suddenly foreign. This man who knew how I took my coffee, who could identify my favorite obscure jazz recordings by the first few notes, who had held me through my father's funeral last spring. Had he been calculating his betrayal even then? I'm going to shower, I announced, needing distance to think. Under the hot water, I finally allowed the tears to come. Not of sadness, but of pure, incandescent rage. By the time I emerged, wrapped in my robe with hair dripping onto my shoulders, I had composed myself again. Marcus was in bed, scrolling through his phone, our bed. The sheets I'd splurged on after my biggest commission last year. I slipped in beside him, maintaining the careful distance that had naturally developed between two people who worked exhausting hours. Stevens wants to meet at the Space tomorrow, he said without looking up. Says he has some ideas for the inaugural exhibition. I told him we'd consider it. I murmured, turning away. Sounds promising. As his breathing eventually deepened into sleep, I stared at the Manhattan skyline through our bedroom windows, the city that never sleeps keeping vigil with me through the longest night of my life. My phone vibrated silently under my pillow at 3 a.m. Diana's brother confirming what I already knew. The transfer had Marcus's digital fingerprints all over it. He'd used my laptop when I was in Chicago last month for that artist retreat. Keyloggers, authentication interceptions, the works. Not just an opportunistic theft, but a planned operation. Sometime before dawn, another text arrived. This one from Diane, my financial advisor. Emergency meeting confirmed, 7 a.m. My office. And I slipped out of bed at 6, leaving a note about the Taiwanese collector meeting. By 7:15, I was sitting in Diane's 47th floor office with a view of Central Park, reviewing the devastation. He was thorough, Diane said, sliding documents across her immaculate desk. Not just the collection fund, he attempted transfers from 3 other accounts but triggered security protocols. The gallery incorporation papers give him majority control despite your capital contribution. And this, she pointed to a clause highlighted in yellow, would allow him to buy out your stake for a fraction of its worth under certain conditions. Which conditions? I asked, though I already suspected. Breach of fiduciary duty, professional misconduct, or criminal charges. Her expression was grim. If you were, say, accused of fraud or embezzlement. He could push me out entirely, I finished. The full picture was emerging with horrifying clarity. Marcus hadn't just stolen my money. He'd positioned himself to steal my gallery, my reputation, everything I'd built over a decade in the art world. We've frozen the accounts and flagged the transfer as fraudulent, Diane continued. But recovery could take months, and the publicity. In the art world, reputation was currency. A public legal battle would devastate my consultancy business regardless of the outcome. Clients would flee, afraid of association with financial impropriety. Artists would question my stability. Everything I'd built would collapse while the case dragged through courts. What are my options? I asked, voice steadier than I felt. Legally, a criminal complaint, civil litigation, possibly an emergency injunction on the gallery formation. Diane leaned back. But Elise, you didn't come to me just for legal options, did you? I looked at my longtime advisor, a woman who had guided me from my first tentative investments after selling my own artwork to finance my business degree. No, I admitted, I need something cleaner, less public. Then you need leverage, she said simply. Something that matters more to him than money. As I left Diane's office, the morning sun bathed Manhattan in golden light, traffic already building on the streets below. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Meeting pushed to 11. Everything okay? I typed back, all good, grabbing breakfast with an old client. See you at the space. The space was a former industrial loft in Tribeca that we'd leased for the gallery. Nearly 4,000 square feet of potential, with soaring ceilings and light that made artists weep with appreciation. I'd found it. Marcus had negotiated the lease. Now I wondered if even that had been orchestrated, if he'd known all along that he would eventually push me out of the picture. By 10:30, I was sitting in another office, this one belonging to James Watkins, Marcus's former partner at the Chicago Gallery, the man who had sold his stake to finance his divorce 2 years ago, creating the opening that had ultimately brought Marcus to New York. Finding him hadn't been difficult. Convincing him to meet on short notice had required only the mention of Marcus's name and the words, financial discrepancy. I'm not surprised, James said after I explained the situation, his Chicago accent thickening with emotion. The numbers never added up during our partnership either. I couldn't prove anything, but you suspected, I finished. He nodded, sliding a folder across the desk. I kept records. Discrepancies in sales reports, missing pieces, clients who mysteriously disappeared from our contact lists, only to reappear in private sales elsewhere. I opened the folder, scanning documents that painted a damning picture. Not just theft, but systematic fraud. Artists shortchanged, investors misled, sales manipulated. Why didn't you pursue this? James's laugh was hollow. My ex-wife's attorney advised against it. Said the legal fees would bankrupt me, and Marcus's family connections would bury any case. Better to walk away with something than nothing. His family connections? The Marshall fortune, James said, surprise evident in his expression. You didn't know? His grandfather was William Marshall of Marshall Shipping. Old Chicago money, massive political connections. The art thing is just Marcus's way of distinguishing himself from the family business. The revelation landed like a physical blow. Marcus had always presented himself as self-made, distanced from his conventional business family. We'd bonded over our shared experience of fighting for recognition without inherited advantages. Another lie. "I need to know everything," I said, pulling out my notebook. "And I need your help with something specific, his stake in the Chicago gallery. How liquid is it? What's the current valuation?" By the time I walked into our Tribeca space at 11:15, I was armed with knowledge and a plan. The loft was humming with activity. Contractors finalizing lighting installations, assistants arranging furniture for the meeting area. Marcus in the center of it all, directing traffic like a conductor. "There she is," he called when he spotted me, crossing the room to kiss my cheek. "Stevens just texted he's running late. Typical collector time." I smiled, the expression no longer requiring effort. The clarity of purpose had replaced confusion. Perfect timing. "I wanted to show you something first." I pulled out my tablet, opening a document. Ideas for the inaugural exhibition. I was thinking about identity and authenticity, works that challenge our perception of what's real. Marcus glanced at the screen, nodding approvingly. Strong concept. We could anchor it with the Murakami, maybe approach the Chen estate about that installation series. Exactly what I was thinking, I agreed, sliding closer. I also had a thought about our partnership structure. His attention sharpened, a barely perceptible tension entering his shoulders. "Oh?" "I've been reviewing the paperwork, and I think we should adjust the equity distribution." I kept my voice casual, swiping to a different document. "Given your expertise and connections, perhaps you should have a larger stake." The tension in his shoulders eased immediately. "That's generous of you, Elise. But the current structure is fair, given your capital contribution." "About that," I said, meeting his eyes directly. "I've been thinking of restructuring my investment. More liquid assets, less tied up in the collection fund." A flash of something, alarm, calculation, crossed his features before his expression smoothed again. "That's an interesting approach. We should discuss it with the financial team before making any decisions." "Of course," I agreed pleasantly. "No rush. Oh, I ran into James Watkins this morning. He sends his regards." The name landed like a grenade between us. Marcus's smile didn't falter, but his eyes went cold. "James, that's unexpected. What brought him to New York?" "Consulting work with the Guggenheim, apparently. We had quite an illuminating conversation about gallery partnerships." I checked my watch. "Stevens should be here soon. I'm going to review the contract points one more time." As I walked away, I could feel Marcus's eyes on my back, recalculating, reassessing. Good. Let him wonder what I knew, what James had told me. Let him feel the ground shifting beneath his perfectly polished shoes. The meeting with Stevens proceeded smoothly, all smiles and handshakes, discussions of exhibition timelines and acquisition priorities. I played my part flawlessly, the supportive partner deferring to Marcus's expertise, while subtly shaping the conversation. All while my phone occasionally buzzed with updates from Diana, James, and my newly assembled team. By late afternoon, as we wrapped up with promises of follow-up meetings, I could sense Marcus's growing unease. The casual touches, the inside jokes, the seamless collaborative rhythm we'd developed over 3 years, all still functioning on the surface, but with a new undercurrent of watchfulness from his side. "Celebratory drinks?" he suggested as Stevens departed. "That couldn't have gone better. Actually," I replied, checking my phone with deliberate nonchalance, "I need to meet Diana about that piece she's holding for the Henderson collection." "Rain check?" His smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course. Don't let her sell it to anyone else." I kissed him goodbye, the familiar gesture now part of an elaborate performance. Wouldn't dream of it. See you at home. Instead of meeting Diana, I went to my lawyer's office, then to my bank, and finally to a small, exclusive restaurant in the West Village, where James Watkins was waiting with 2 associates from the Chicago Gallery's board. "Everything's in place," James confirmed as I joined them. The board voted unanimously. They're eager to distance themselves from any potential scandal. "And the timing?" I asked, accepting the glass of Bordeaux the waiter offered. "As soon as you give the word," one of the board members replied. "The paperwork is ready." I raised my glass in a small toast. Then to new beginnings. By midnight, when I finally returned to the penthouse, Marcus was waiting with 2 glasses of champagne, and a suspicious level of attentiveness. "There you are," he said, rising from the couch where he'd clearly been monitoring the door. I was getting worried. I accepted the champagne, noting the particular vintage, one we'd discovered during a weekend trip to the Hamptons last summer. "Just finalizing some details with Diana. The Henderson acquisition is more complicated than expected. Anything I can help with?" His tone was casual, but his eyes were watchful. "Not necessary," I replied, sipping the excellent champagne. "Nothing I can't handle." We moved through the evening's rituals. Dinner delivery from our favorite Thai place, conversation about Stephen's preferences, planning for tomorrow's meetings, all while engaged in a silent secondary communication of tests and evaluations. He was checking my story, I realized as he casually mentioned running into Diana's assistant earlier, looking for inconsistencies, gauging how much I knew or suspected. Meanwhile, I was laying groundwork, mentioning gallery logistics that would require his presence in specific places tomorrow, establishing alibis for my own planned movements. As we prepared for bed, Marcus's phone chimed with a notification. He checked it, frowning slightly. "Problem?" I asked, applying my nighttime moisturizer with practiced strokes. "No," he said after a moment's hesitation. "Just a message from the Chicago Gallery. Administrative details about my remaining stake." I hummed acknowledgement, hiding my satisfaction. The board had moved faster than expected. That night, lying beside the man who had plotted my professional destruction, I felt strangely peaceful, not because I had forgiven his betrayal, but because I had transcended it. Tomorrow would bring the culmination of my counterplan, a strategy worthy of the high-stakes art world we inhabited, where perception was reality and timing was everything. Marcus had taught me that lesson too well. Now he would experience it firsthand. Morning arrived with a symphony of New York sounds, traffic horns, distant sirens, the percussion of construction from the never-ending development 2 blocks over. I woke before Marcus, watching him sleep with a detachment that would have been impossible just 48 hours earlier. The intimacy we'd shared now felt like a confidence game, one in which I'd been both mark and unwitting accomplice. My phone vibrated on the nightstand. A text from Diana. All set. 11 a.m. I slipped from bed and prepared for the day with methodical precision. The charcoal Armani suit that commanded respect in negotiation rooms. Hair pulled back in a sleek chignon that added years and authority. The Cartier watch that had been my first significant purchase after landing the Parsons account, a reminder of what I'd built through my own talent and determination. Marcus emerged from the bedroom as I was finishing my coffee, his hair still damp from the shower. "Power meeting?" he asked, noting my attire with appreciation. "The Japanese investors," I replied smoothly. "They're only in town until tomorrow." He nodded, pouring himself coffee. "I thought that was next week. Rescheduled. Their acquisition target in London fell through, so they're accelerating the New York investments." The lie flowed easily, built on enough truth to be convincing. "What's your day look like?" "Meeting the contractor at the space at 9. Then that walkthrough with the insurance adjusters at 11. He frowned slightly. "I thought you were joining for the insurance meeting." I waved dismissively. "The Japanese take priority, $500,000 in potential commissions. You can handle the adjusters. Just make sure they understand the security requirements for the Kuhn's installation." "Of course." He approached, straightening my already perfect lapel with familiar intimacy. "Dinner tonight? That new place on Lexington that Architectural Digest would not shut up about?" I smiled, allowing myself to briefly savor what we might have been in another reality. "Perfect. I'll make a reservation for 8. At precisely 8:45, I left our building, nodding to Frank the doorman who had witnessed 3 years of our comings and goings, not to the fictional Japanese investors, but to Diane's office, where James Watkins and representatives from 3 banks were waiting. "The Chicago transfer is complete," James confirmed as I took my seat. "The board purchased Marcus's remaining stake this morning using the capital you provided. He's been officially removed as partner, with notification sent to all gallery clients." "And the account traces?" I asked, turning to Diane. She smiled grimly. "Concrete evidence. The money trail connects directly to his personal accounts in the Caymans, then to a separate LLC that was established last year, right around the time you two began seriously discussing the New York Gallery. Which means he's been planning this for at least that long, I concluded, the confirmation stinging despite my preparation. The good news, my lawyer interjected, is that this gives us everything we need for both criminal charges and civil recovery. The bad news is that going public still risks your professional reputation in the short term. I understand, I said, straightening the documents before me. But we're not filing charges today. Elise, Diane began, concern evident. I raised a hand. Trust me. There's a more elegant solution. At 10:55, I sent Marcus a text. Insurance meeting pushed to 11:30, staying to finish up here. His reply came quickly. No problem. I'll grab coffee across the street until then. Perfect. I knew which coffee shop he meant. The artisanal place with the uncomfortable metal chairs and excellent pastries. The one with the large windows overlooking the street, where he'd be visible to anyone passing by. At 11 sharp, as I walked into our gallery space through the back entrance, a sleek town car pulled up in front of that same coffee shop. Out stepped William Marshall III, Marcus's grandfather, chairman emeritus of Marshall Shipping, and notorious stickler for family reputation. Behind him came Marcus's parents, their expressions grim. I watched through the gallery's security camera feed as Marcus spotted his family through the coffee shop window. Even from a distance, I could see the blood drain from his face. While that family reunion unfolded across the street, I moved through our gallery space with purpose. The digital keypad yielded to the code I'd established when we first leased the property. Inside, contractors were still working on lighting installations, barely glancing up as I walked to the back office. Marcus's laptop sat on the desk where he'd left it, expecting to return after the insurance meeting. Its password, the name of his first dog combined with his birth year, had been embarrassingly easy to obtain months ago during one of those intimate late-night conversations that new couples use to build trust. Within minutes, I had transferred all the files I needed, installed the software James's tech team had provided, and placed the final piece of my plan. A single document in the center of the desk. My phone buzzed with a text from our security system. Someone had entered the front door. The gallery's cameras showed Marcus rushing in, face flushed, grandfather and parents following with the deliberate pace of people unaccustomed to being rushed. I stepped out of the office just as they entered the main gallery space. Elise, Marcus said, surprise and alarm battling in his expression. I thought you were with the Japanese investors. Change of plans, I replied calmly, extending my hand to his grandfather. Mr. Marshall, an honor to finally meet you. I'm Elise Harlow. The older man's handshake was firm, his assessment shrewd. Ms. Harlow, I understand you're my grandson's business partner. Among other things, I agreed pleasantly. Marcus stepped between us, the movement almost imperceptible. Grandfather, perhaps we could reschedule. Elise and I have that insurance meeting. The one that was pushed to 11:30? I asked innocently. We have plenty of time. In fact, I was just reviewing some financial documentation I thought your family might find interesting. I gestured toward the office. Perhaps we could all sit down. What followed was the most civilized evisceration I'd ever witnessed. In the gallery's conference room, beneath a massive canvas depicting the fall of Icarus, I laid out the evidence piece by piece. The unauthorized transfer, the shell companies, the documents from the Chicago gallery showing years of financial manipulation, the gallery incorporation papers revealing his planned takeover. Throughout my presentation, Marcus attempted interventions that died beneath his grandfather's glacial stare. William Marshall III might have retired from active management of the family shipping empire, but he clearly retained the authority that had built it. Is this all accurate, Marcus? His father finally asked when I finished. Marcus's expression cycled through denial, anger, calculation, and finally a desperate sort of charm. It's a misunderstanding. The transfers were pre-approved as part of our gallery capitalization strategy. Elise and I discussed. That's not true, I interrupted quietly, sliding forward a final document. This is a statement from my bank confirming no such authorizations exist. It also shows the exact time and IP address of the access point used to initiate the transfers. William Marshall III removed gold-rimmed glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose, a gesture so similar to one of Marcus's habitual movements that I felt a sudden, unwelcome pang of emotion. "The Marshall name," he said heavily, "has stood for integrity in American business for 4 generations. We have weathered recessions, wars, and political upheavals without a single scandal." His gaze lifted to his grandson. "I allowed you to pursue this art venture against my better judgment, believing it would teach you value creation rather than mere fortune management. Instead, you have engaged in common theft." "Grandfather, I can explain." "To the authorities, perhaps," the older man cut in. "Or to your cellmate." Marcus blanched. "You can't be serious. This is a private business matter between Elise and me." "Not anymore." His mother spoke for the first time, her elegant hands clasped tightly. "This becomes a family matter the moment you involve the Marshall name in fraudulent activities." I cleared my throat. "If I may," I said, drawing their attention, "there may be a solution that preserves both justice and discretion." For the next 20 minutes, I outlined my proposal. Marcus would relinquish all claims to the gallery and my consultancy. He would return the stolen funds plus interest. He would sign a non-compete agreement preventing him from working in the art world for 5 years. In exchange, I would not press criminal charges that would inevitably generate public scandal. "And what of my grandson's future?" William Marshall asked, studying me with new appreciation. "I understand Marshall Shipping has operations in Singapore," I replied. "Perhaps Marcus's talents could be useful there, far from the New York art scene and under family supervision." The older man's mouth twitched in what might have been amusement. "You've considered everything, Ms. Harlow." "Not everything," I admitted. "Just everything that matters to me. My business, my reputation, and my gallery." "Your gallery," Marcus repeated bitterly. "Yes," I confirmed, meeting his gaze directly. "My gallery. Just as it always should have been." The documents were signed within the hour, Marcus's hand shaking slightly as he relinquished his claims to everything we'd built together. His grandfather's attorney, summoned from Midtown with impressive speed, oversaw the process with professional detachment. As the Marshall family prepared to leave, William paused beside me. "You would have made a formidable addition to our shipping business, Ms. Harlow." "I'm exactly where I belong," I replied. "But I appreciate the compliment." Marcus was the last to leave, hesitating at the door. "Was any of it real?" he asked, voice low enough that only I could hear. "Us, I mean." I considered the question, remembering the genuine moments amidst the calculation. The laughter that hadn't been performative, the dreams that might have been sincere before greed corrupted them. "Parts of it," I finally answered. "Just not enough." He nodded once, something like regret crossing his features before he straightened his shoulders and walked out. I stood alone in what was now truly my gallery space. The afternoon light streamed through the industrial windows, illuminating possibilities. Within a week, Marcus would be in Singapore, the money would be restored to my accounts, and the art world would buzz with tastefully vague rumors about our amicable separation due to differing creative visions. Diana found me there an hour later, still standing in that perfect light. "It's done?" she asked, joining me. "It's done," I confirmed. "No charges, no scandal, no Marcus." "And the gallery?" I smiled, gesturing to the vast, promising space around us. "The inaugural exhibition opens in 6 weeks. Authenticity and Deception, Truth in Modern Perception," Diana laughed. "Fitting." I thought so. I linked my arm through hers, suddenly exhausted, but strangely exhilarated. "Drinks? I think we've earned them." As we walked out into the crisp autumn air, New York hummed around us, relentless, unforgiving, yet endlessly full of potential for those who understood its rhythms. I had lost and found myself in this city before. Now I would do it again, wiser for the experience and unfettered by false partnerships. The betrayal that should have destroyed me had instead distilled me to my essence. In trying to steal my gallery, Marcus had given me something far more valuable: the unshakable knowledge of my own resilience. 3 years of memories would eventually fade. The anger would dissipate. But the gallery, my gallery, would remain, transformed from a shared dream into a monument to the art of survival.